Hey everyone, I'm back to share more about some of the paranormal experiences I've had throughout my life, and so I'm going to add this video to my playlist, the JodyVision. Now if you go through those videos, I have a number of things that I like to discuss, but my biggest story is the visionary state experience. Now before I realized I was going to visionary state, I was already aware of things like uh, being able to have dreams that come true or come true in some way, and I was already aware that you could go out of your body. So the funny thing about the visionary slips is they were happening for a course of 18 years before I realized I was even doing it, and that was basically my process of learning what it is and how it does. And what I really mean is what it is and how it works, right? So anyways, the next story I have to tell you, I feel like it's a little more gratifying as far as getting confirmation that I'm seeing something remotely that was really happening. Okay, so, but unfortunately, I'm going to be talking about September 11th of 2001. That was a very unfortunate day, and I'm very sorry for anybody that was in that or near that, or even remotely connected. Okay, so now, the one day that I'm going to tell you about, I was basically dreaming that I was at the Twin Towers as the plane was being flown into it, but then I was just woken up by a phone call where my friend was telling me the news of what had just happened, and so I thought, oh wow, that's amazing, because I swear I was just dreaming about something like that. Well, before that happened, I think what I was doing was like a type of a practice dream. Now, when I lived in Denver, Colorado, I was living on Capitol Hill, so for me to go to the airport, all I would have to do is walk down to 16th Street Mall and ride the free mall ride, and then take a bus out of Market Street Station to the airport. So I've made that trip a time or two to go see my papa-san, so this time I was dreaming about it, and it just seems like I see the whole process, but it kind of zooms by really fast. And next thing you know, I'm riding a plane, but instead of being inside the plane, I was riding plane back. And so at first I found myself standing there on top of the plane going, oh my goodness, this can't be good. But then I started to realize, no, I'm safe up here. So I must have been out of body. And I was kind of connected to the plane by elastic cords that they kind of came out of the sides of my hips and just connected to the vehicle. And so I started to realize that not only am I safe standing on it, I could also bounce up and down, and those cords would kind of draw me back to the plane. And I started having more fun. I may have had a dream or two like this where I found myself riding plane back, and I was able to bounce. And then when I got really comfortable, then I would start jumping up and doing flips. I felt like I was having my own little circus up there. So that's kind of interesting that I got training ahead of time before going to the actual dream. So this time I woke up finding myself at the very back end of the plane on the outside of it, and I could see that we were above a city that was not Denver. And one of the biggest clues was that there was an ocean line I could see in front of me, and I just knew everything was different, but I still didn't know where I was at. And when I realized, I'm high up in the sky and I'm just like barely leaning into this plane. So it's kind of like one of the tail wings. I think I was at the right tail wing, and I was just kind of leaning against it. And I started to, the second I woke up to the scenario, as soon as I found myself in this place, the first thing I thought was, uh-oh, kind of like before, like, uh-oh, I shouldn't be up here, I'm probably gonna fall. And it seemed like my guide was just right over here. Now, this is something people will talk about a lot of times. Like, when my grandmother flatlined, she had somebody out here that she wasn't sure if their name was Jesus or Michael, so you couldn't see them. And I've had a couple of dreams, like I think when I went to the white light, I felt like I had somebody that was just right over here that was taking me to the white light, So similarly, a lot of people experience a guiding being that's like always out of sight, but they communicate with telepathy. So as soon as I started to be afraid, they calmed me down quickly just by saying that I'm safe. They let me know that I'm safe and that I only need to look around and observe what's happening. And so that's when I realized I'm bumped up against the tail wing of this plane, and what was holding me was a similar elastic cord made of that light energy, and it wasn't tight or anything. I was just kind of just being held into place so that way I wouldn't float away, so to speak. And so as soon as I realized I was safe, I started taking in the environment. What's happening is the plane I was on or attached to was flying right into the buildings that were in front of us, and I knew these were the tallest buildings in town. I still didn't know where I was or what we were hitting. I just knew it was a big city next to the ocean, and it was the tallest buildings in town. And I could hear people screaming on board and somebody yelling out that we're flying right into those buildings. So it kind of helped give me the idea that, oh my God, we were flying right into those buildings. And thankfully, I didn't have to stay during the crash. So I only got to see a small snippet, enough to know that much. And then I was seeing a red helicopter in the air. Now, that could have been more of a fabrication of the mind, because here in the Flathead Valley, we see those red helicopters flying through the air. We know those are the ones that go to the hospital. So it was just symbolic that I was witnessing a really big emergency, and it's going to probably have a lot of emergencies coming next, you know. So the phone rang at about 2 in the afternoon. Now, funny thing is this event was taking place at 7:30 in the morning in New York City. Therefore, it would have been approximately 5:30 in the morning in Denver that it happened. But funny thing is, it seems like I was dreaming about it or out of my body right when the phone rang at 2 o'clock, and it's my friend Dennis. He was another cab driver. I met him down at the office, and we started talking about music. So we made friends over listening to like industrial music and stuff like that, right? So he was my buddy, and we were in touch quite a bit. So that's why, you know, I was probably one of the first people he called, and he goes, "Jody, did you hear what happened? There was a terrorist attack in New York." I'm like, "Really? What happened?" And he started explaining that some terrorists took some commercial planes and flew them into the Twin Towers. And I was like, "Oh, I was just dreaming about that. Very interesting." So, you know, later on, as you know, they went over the story more and more, I realized the plane I was on could have been flight number 93, if that was the one that was traveling in the general direction of the ocean. I was kind of like hanging on to its right tail wing for just a small portion of that trip right before they hit the building. So it makes me wonder how many spirit beings were there, you know. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person. So what this is a type of remote viewing that comes from simply going out of body. Now, sometimes we go out of body and we start going into other levels. So there's been very few times that I've gone out of my body and either had any control of it, like I have very little control of this, but there were a few times when I was a teenager I was able to get out of my body and feel like I was there and awake in my parents' house, you know. But most of the time I think I'm out of body. It's almost like dreamscaping, and so that's where like I might have been out of my body and present as a, you know, as a being during that crash, you know. So it's really interesting to me, because this is one of the few times that I've seen anything just like that, where, you know, I was out of my body and I was there, and the very next thing I'm being told exactly what I was witnessing. And not only that, and this is kind of maybe a personal thing, like if you have favorite numbers, I feel like 93 seems to be a special number to me for some reason. It kind of keeps coming up in my life, and that's the plane I was with. Now, my friend Rosie Clearlight says that she's been through a few experiences where she gets pulled out of her body and she ends up near a site where something like a disaster has occurred, which means there are people dying. And so when they had the earthquake in 1994 in the San Francisco area, that's something that she probably feels connected to, because she grew up in the San Francisco area. And when she saw that, she said that the bridge that collapsed in that earthquake, she always knew something was bad about that bridge. You know, she's always kind of afraid of it. And so that's the bridge that collapsed when she was out of her body and she was seeing the incident, and so beings were rising out, people were rising out of their bodies as they were dying, and there was her and a number of other people there that were there to assist them. So as these people were passing on and coming out of their body, so there are people on earth in their bodies, they have to take a nap. So Rosie's like, man, I sure need to take a nap, and she wasn't even tired. So she was living in Conifer, Colorado, I think. Actually, I'm not sure where she was living. It was just one of those things where she felt like, I really need to go take a nap, even though I'm not tired. And she went out of her body, and she says she's had more than one experience like this. So that's where I felt like maybe I'm doing something very similar, that, as these people were crashing into the building, maybe I was there part just to be a witness, or maybe I don't remember anything after that, but I could be somebody who helps assist people as they cross over. So what they were doing, so Rosie and the other beings, there were other, actually just seems like other people that, leave their body just to help. So it's kind of weird, because you'd think, only angels are involved with that, but maybe some people are assisting the angels, so maybe some of us are tied in with that line of function, so that's an interesting story. And so when I told her my story, she had to tell me her story, so I thought I would throw that in there, that that's very possible that when a big accident like that happens, there are spirit beings that come to assist those who are crossing over, and that there are certain people who are alive today that go out of their body and do out-of-body work. Now, this is another thing I've been told by both Rosie and my old Kung Fu teacher, Ron. So I've talked about him in other videos, I think, where he and I were working on the subject matter of astral travel. And he had much better control of it than I did, and so to me, I couldn't remember what happens when I go out of my body, but he witnessed me, and he said, Jody, when you go to sleep at night, you go out of your body and you go all over the place. And so what he's telling me is that when I go out of my body at night, that I'm going around assisting people. Now, when I was a cab driver between 2000 and 2002, there were a number of times where it's one of the things you're not supposed to do when you're a cab driver, but I let people invite me to their house if they were cool and visit with people. And sometimes after I leave, I feel like I've met them before, or I feel like I've dreamed of their house before, or something like this, So I felt like, hey, maybe that's part of my functionality, going out there and meeting people, and maybe, some of those people that I hang out with is because we're having a very spiritual experience together, but inviting a stranger in, having a lot of times we have a talk that's very uplifting. And many times would never see those people again. That's the funny thing. So I do want to go back and make a video about my life, explaining how it was when I drove taxi for 2 years. So that's some of the stuff I was experiencing there. And during that time, like I was saying, it was my taxi driver friend who called me up and told me about the 9/11 thing. So once 9/11 happened, so the impact that it had on my life is it was killing our business. So because people weren't flying as much, it was killing the airport, and people weren't wanting to go out because people don't want to be in a big skyscraper or anywhere near masses and stuff, because they're thinking they don't want to come under attack by a terrorist or something. So it really screwed up our economy back then. So it impacted my life in that way, and it impacted everybody's life to this day, just because of the way the government's been stepping up security and policies and just making more and more rules all the time that stop anyone from having any fun. Like we've been laughing about the airport. It's like if you want to ride a plane, you got to let TSA practically, molester you through the, they put you through the metal detector, and then they squeeze your balls, So that's what you got to do to ride, and so they're picking on people that are like, crippled people and old people, and just so many people have had terrible experiences because of the way we've stepped up security at these airports, all because of this one little shitty incident, So anyways, along with that, I want to say, it's funny thing is, when George Bush Jr. was running for president, like, I'm no expert, like, I barely study politics, and I'm not that educated, but I just knew, because I listened to my grown-ups, I grew up with a family that likes to vote Democrat, and so, I remember when Bush was running against Bill Clinton, and my dad was going around stealing everybody's sign who wanted to vote for Bush, so he loved stealing. He's like, come on, Jody, let's go steal some signs. And so I had to go steal some George Bush signs. He thought that was so much fun, So he kind of taught me to hate the George Bush family too. And, there's good reason for that. The military-industrial complex is ruining the world, and those guys are all about it because, when you're the captain and you're in a safe position, that's okay with you because you're not the one on the front lines and your kids are not the one on the front lines. But when they had George Bush running for president, I'm like, they're just going to put him in office and they're going to start a war. Sure enough, they put him in office and everybody was pissing him on because they felt like there was some election fraud going on in order to get him in. And then within the first year of his presidency, lo and behold, we were facing a terrorist attack. So within that time of his term, we were able to go to war with Iraq and all the Middle East guys and just, start another war over there, like picked up where his dad left off. And so, because we were in the thick of it, when it was election time, a lot of people felt they had no choice but to vote him in. Or they also committed election fraud again, making it look obviously like, well, obviously need George Bush Jr. and so we could finish up this job. So when it came time for the next election and we had Barack Obama, they put him in front of us and said, okay, now you get to pick between him and this other dork from the Republicans, which seemed like a really weak, option, okay? And so I knew it, man. I was like, they're going to put Barack Obama in office because for the last 2 elections, we've been hearing a lot of rhetoric about election fraud. And now that the war is over, now's the time we could probably afford to do this. So I think they're kind of using that character to just settle everyone down. So we had Barack Obama for a couple of presidential terms. And that way I didn't really hear as much rhetoric about any election fraud. I feel like it satisfied people. It made people felt like their vote counted because we voted for the first black president. Yay! And he was like a nice looking guy and he has a nice voice, much nicer than these ugly ass George Bush people. Now, when it came time for President Trump and Hillary Clinton, boy, that was a real tough one to guess because I was thinking, they're going to want to put Hillary Clinton in office because then we could have our first female president. Well, here's the thing. It's because of George Bush and George Bush Jr., we started saying, well, that's a dynasty. That's not a presidency. We're just giving a bunch of power to one family. So I was really having a hard time guessing this one, because President Trump, he's a little bit different than your usual president-elect because he's not a lawyer like the rest of them. But, he just seems to be a bad candidate because he just, he kind of has a history of saying really fucked up things like, and I grabbed her by the pussy, like, and I don't really care about that, but just somehow he comes off as a very less professional person many of these other candidates. Like Hillary Clinton also has a reputation for assassinating people, so I don't know who's worse, but so the reason she didn't get to be elected was because people had the mentality that, since we had Bill Clinton, if we put her in, then we're going to have another dynasty like the Bush family. So I really had a hard time guessing, but the only thing I'm going to guess on is that President Trump makes a great pawn for stirring shit up, because he had the right personality. He says a lot of things that are too off color. And it made a perfect presidential term to have riots and all kinds of stuff like that. And so when it came time for Joe Biden, clearly he makes a great candidate because he's asleep at the wheel. I mean, this guy's like belongs in a nursing home. So nothing against him. I mean, you get old and you die. But wouldn't it be nice if the person in control was like wide awake and had perfect clarity and all that good stuff? But again, the presidential election is pretty much rigged, and according to theory has been rigged since the Kennedy assassination. They've been putting presidents in office that they find useful for the purpose. Now, maybe the president-elects are not fully aware of that. Maybe it's just there are other powers at B that have any say in this, so they let us look like we're voting on it, and we're not. Like when they put Biden in office, there was like boxes full of ballots coming in that only had his name checked off and nothing else. And when the employees were telling their managers, hey, we have a problem, they're like, nope, you gotta count those. So we're seeing election fraud to get a Democrat in, just like we were seeing with the George Bush family. My grandma's laughing at them. They were finding bales of ballots in the ocean washing up on the beach, So they obviously let us vote on some things, or we wouldn't have legal marijuana and other such things. So you can vote on the local level, you can vote on a lot of other things. But when it comes to presidents and certain politicians, these people are pawns, and we're finding out more and more that the United States isn't in control of itself. It seems like we're being taken over in a really sneaky way. And that's why, you know, as much as I support immigration, I love to support anybody who wants to make their life better. The concern with the border is, what if they're sneaking in troops? Uh-oh. So there's a lot of rhetoric out there saying, oh my goodness, our country's in trouble. And so that's where, like, you know, having that out-of-body experience, being able to see 9/11 with remote viewing is super special to me, because it does help give me some confirmation that I'm clairvoyant, in a sense that I can actually see truthful events happening that are remote to me in the physical. And since I've also experienced time travel in the visionary state, you can also see periods of time that are remote to you. And in my case, went back and then relived it, and then I got proof, oh, I was definitely here before. So I got that much. And so this type of gift can be super useful in the way of survival. In fact, governments around the world do take it seriously, and they employ people who have the gift of remote viewing. So for example, like Russia and the United States have been kind of enemies or frenemies over the ages, and one of the things they employ are remote viewers who can figure out where our missiles are being stored. And because of that, we have to actively keep moving them around to make it harder on the remote viewers from Russia and other such countries that are using psychic awareness as a tool to locate these weapons. So I do think psychic awareness is important to research and utilize, but you gotta be super open-minded, because there's a difference between using your brain, which it seems like we have a type of clear communication. You know, I can say something, you can understand it, but when we're using psychic awareness, we're kind of using the intelligence of the heart to sense things. So it's kind of like taking your hand and reaching into a bag and guessing what's in there. So it's just another sense that you can use. So like going out of my body and seeing 9/11, it's like, whoa, you know, that was a very impactful event. I was meant to see that and get confirmation that sometimes I'm receiving truthful information. Now, if you watched my last video, I did kind of what I call an early summary of my visionary state experience. And what I wanted to do is try to highlight some of the places where I had some exciting visionary state visions, and then followed up with a lot of confirmation where, like, I'm right about a lot of things. There's just a few things that I know were wrong, and there's just a few other things that have yet to be confirmed. So anyways, I really thought it'd be fun for once to share a story about something other than the visionary state, which is astral projection or out-of-body experience that serves as a form of remote viewing. Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this little story. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.